Ice cracks, a sound like breaking bone. Wind tears at wet wool. It finds every seam, every opening. It bites the skin. Men shiver. They don't speak. Breath hangs in the air, a foul vapor. The boat lurches. Dark water sloshes over the gunwales. Thick ice grinds against the hull. A man coughs, a deep, wet rattle. Another retches. There's nothing in his stomach. The river is a monster, black, angry. It wants to swallow them. It wants to pull them under, into the crushing cold. They have no choice. They push forward. They pull on the oars. They fight the current. They fight the ice. They fight the fear, victory, or death. There is nothing else. By December 1776, the glorious cause for liberty had become a frozen, bloody retreat, a desperate scramble for survival against the biting winds of failure and the professional might of the British Empire. The soaring ideals declared in Philadelphia that summer now felt like a fever dream, a memory from another life, as the Continental Army disintegrated across New Jersey. They'd been routed from New York, chased from fort to fort, leaving a trail of abandoned equipment and shallow graves. For the men still huddled around sputtering fires on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River, hope was a foreign currency. Their enlistments were set to expire at year's end, and few had any reason to stay. They were farmers and blacksmiths, not soldiers, and they were starving in a cause that felt utterly, hopelessly lost. Their commander, George Washington, knew the stakes with a clarity that must have felt like a physical weight. The revolution wasn't just dying, it was being methodically strangled. And for those captured, a fate worse than a quick death on the battlefield awaited them in the filthy and malignant prison ships anchored in New York, where the foul, infected air was a weapon in itself. Men remembered the suffocating heat of the summer campaigns, now replaced by a different kind of misery. But the memory of that stagnant, impure atmosphere, the foul and nauseous vapor of dysentery and despair, haunted them. It was a promise of what awaited any man who surrendered. This gamble, this mad plan to cross an ice choked river in a severe storm to attack a garrison of professionals, wasn't born of strategic genius alone. It was born of absolute desperation. It was a choice between the possibility of death in action and the certainty of death in a floating cage. Across the river in Trenton, Colonel Johann Rau and his Hessian soldiers, the feared German mercenaries of the British Crown, were celebrating Christmas. They were professionals, contemptuous of the rebel rabble. They felt secure, insulated by the river, the punishing weather, and the rebels' string of humiliating defeats. They drank, they sang, they slept, blissfully unaware that the ghost of an army was about to materialize from the heart of the storm. The plan was audacious, perhaps foolish, a coordinated three-pronged attack to encircle and annihilate the Trenton garrison. But war is friction, and Washington's complex machine began to break down almost immediately. The severe storm, a true nor'easter with gale force winds and freezing rain, was both a curse and a blessing. It provided cover, but it also made the crossing a nightmare. Two of the three American columns, under Generals Ewing and Cadwalader, found the thick ice of the Delaware impassable. They never made it across. The entire weight of the revolution now rested on Washington's single column of 2,400 men. They were hours behind schedule, the element of a pre-dawn surprise, slipping away with every grinding sheet of ice. Colonel John Glover's Marblehead Mariners, fishermen from Massachusetts, were the only reason the crossing succeeded at all. They wrestled the heavy Durham boats through the ice floes, their hands raw, their faces frozen, using their knowledge of the water to cheat the river's icy grasp. On the New Jersey shore, the misery only intensified. The 9-mile march to Trenton was an ordeal of silent suffering. Boots, many of which were little more than rags wrapped around bleeding feet, left crimson tracks in the snow. The wind grew heavy, driving sleet and snow into their faces. Men stumbled and fell in the dark. The crucial element, their gunpowder, was getting soaked. An officer reported the grim news to Washington. Their muskets would be useless. The general's reply was cold steel. Use the bayonet. The town must be taken. The army was no longer a collection of individuals. It was a single freezing organism, driven forward by the will of one man and the shared terror of what lay behind them. As they neared the town, the pace quickened. The flowing misery began to harden. It sharpened into a single point. Fear became focus. Cold became fury. The attack began with a challenge, a shout in German, a lone sentry. He raised his musket. He never fired it. A shadow moved. A bayonet flashed. The man fell. Silence returned. The town slept. A dog barked. Then thunder. Not from the sky, from the ground. Henry Knox's artillery, 18 cannons, placed at the head of King and Queen streets. The gunners worked in the dark. Their hands were numb. They knew the drill. Worm, cartridge, ram, prime. The match cord sizzled. It touched the vent. A flash of light, a roar that shook the windows. The cannons bucked. Iron wheels screamed on the frozen road. Grape shot tore through the air. It shredded doors. It shattered windows. It ripped through the walls of the barracks. Splinters flew like shrapnel. Hessians woke to chaos. Men spilled into the streets. They were half dressed, confused, disoriented. Officers shouted orders. The words were lost in the storm. They were lost in the cannon fire. Smoke filled the streets, a foul vapor. It mixed with the snow. It blinded everyone. The American infantry advanced, 2 columns, one under Nathanael Greene, the other under John Sullivan. They moved like wraiths through the blizzard. They sealed the escape routes. The Hessians tried to form ranks. They were professionals. They were disciplined, but their discipline was useless. They couldn't see the enemy. They fired into the smoke. They hit nothing. The Americans fired back. Their powder was wet, but not all of it. A musket ball hit Colonel Rowell. He slumped from his horse, mortally wounded. The command structure collapsed. The Hessian lines wavered. They broke. They ran. There was nowhere to run. They were trapped. They were surrounded. The fight lasted less than an hour. It was a brawl in a blizzard, a perfect, brutal ambush. The smoke cleared. The shouting stopped. The storm eased. The sun rose on a scene of carnage. 22 Hessians lay dead. 83 were wounded. Nearly 900 were captured. Their stacked muskets were a monument to their defeat. The Americans suffered only 2 combat deaths. 2 men froze to death on the march. A small price, a terrible price. Washington had his victory, more than a victory. He had a miracle. The news spread like fire on a dry prairie. It electrified the colonies. The cause was not lost. The army was not broken. Men re-enlisted. New recruits arrived. The gamble had paid off. A single morning's violence changed everything. But history forgets the feel of it. It forgets the ice. It forgets the bleeding feet. It remembers the glory. It papers over the desperation. Revolutions aren't won by ideas. They're won by desperate men who cross a river in a storm, because the alternative is a slow death in a foul and nauseous atmosphere.